Welcome back, everyone. This is Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor and his friends give you college football betting tips. I am said statistics professor, Professor Sides. You can follow me at Twitter at Professor Sides. Today, we are talking week 10 of the 2021 college football campaign. With me today to break down all the action are my co-host, Cousin Jared. Hello there.
Hello, how are y'all doing this evening?
Doing well. And also, Jack, hello to you as well.
Good evening, everybody.
Just to kick us off here, you'll hear me reference the model throughout the show. So a reminder to everyone that my full power ratings are available in the Google Sheet that's provided in the show's description. The difference between the two teams' power ratings, once you account for home field advantage, makes up what the model thinks the spread should be between them, which gives us a good idea of where there's value week to week. In the long run, this is a winning strategy. However, there are a couple caveats. First, the model is built to optimize for 130 teams, meaning that it will consistently miss on a few. Further, while it does account for recent play, it doesn't know about recent injuries. So what I'll attempt to do in the course of this episode is explain where I think the model will shine. Also note that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable every week, unfortunately, that is not reality. The aforementioned Google Sheet contains all of the college football picks that we will make for the week. They'll also be posted on Twitter, reminder at Professor Sides, and recorded on the free bet tracking app BetStamp. All those sources will include the plays that we don't get a chance to discuss during this episode and ones that we add throughout the week as the lines move. All the links are in the episode's description. If you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, rate, leave a review. We truly appreciate any and all of those things. And as a reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're also available on your favorite audio podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, if you want to listen in that way.
You cannot continue watching the podcast unless you accept these terms and conditions.
Hey, if I was doing that, I should have had to have said it a whole lot faster, right? I was trying to slow down, so I didn't sound like that. We're going to kick things off this week with another round of the good, the bad, and the best. Cousin Jared, what was good about week 9 college football?
So not a lot of good from my picks last week, but there were a few bright spots. So first thing was I just had this gut feeling about Troy against Coastal Carolina last week. I couldn't really explain it. Just something was telling me to take the 18.5 points that I got with them. And that ended up working out for me. So that was definitely a good thing. And then the second thing is I hate to say when I was right about kind of like a negative thing, but I kind of told everybody last week that Temple's offense had some problems, and sure enough, they got completely blown out and put a goose egg on the scoreboard against UCF. So got to the window with that UCF ticket last week. So those were definitely the two highlights for me last week.
Yeah, for me, it was just a fun day, Saturday. I'm going to highlight two games here that I thought were really good. First off, Michigan State was just fantastic. Michigan is in control of the game. Michigan State comes back, is in control. Then Michigan looks like they're going to come back. And I mean, high scoring, just lots of high scoring, especially for a Big Ten game. Yeah. Lots of chaos. And then I think you wrapped it up with a bow nicely with that BYU Virginia game, which was just an insane first half. 80 points. Unbelievable. It slowed down a little bit in the second half. It didn't go my way as I was backing Virginia, losing the turnover battle, I think 3-0 on that one. And a game like that, when it was a turnover battle 3-0, there's nothing you can do, but it was still a fantastic game to watch. I mean, you just started off with a fun, chaotic game in Michigan State, closed it with a fun, chaotic game in BYU, Virginia. And so that was just a lot of fun personally.
Going back to that Michigan State game, the fun part for me was that I had company over this weekend. So I watched the end of that game with a living room full of Ohio State fans. You can imagine how they felt about the ending of that particular one.
Yeah, I'm sure they were thrilled.
It's nice to be watching one of those games where everyone else in the room cares a lot more than you do, just so you can see how everyone reacts.
It is, because you can enjoy their fun and yet not be quite so emotionally invested, so that if it goes the wrong way, that you're sad about it, right? So it's you're absolutely right there. On to the bad, Cousin Jared.
How much time do we have? The bad segment, right? So
we're gonna have a long podcast anyway today, so maybe not too much.
Okay, yeah. So I had 3 just really bad beats. I know people get tired of listening to my bad beats every week, but hey, I'll keep giving them out as long as they keep happening. So the first one was
company.
Yeah. So the first thing was the Florida State game. Everybody knows how that one ended. That turned what was a winning ticket the entire game into a push. That was just one of those unbelievable things. I wasn't around the TV when it happened. I'd already checked out, thought I had won. Yeah, I was shocked.
Hold on, I have to stop you there, because I should release the text of this. I texted and Jack, you weren't a part of this one. I texted Jared separately. I said, Clemson has had every opportunity to score a touchdown and go up 11 and get outside the number. They have it. The only way that this game can end And Clemson's up 4 points. The only way this game can end is a 19 lateral touchdown. And I said, for one team or the other, I said, it doesn't even matter which one. I said, that's the only way this game is going to end. Either Florida State's going to get the stupid touchdown and they're going to win, or Clemson's going to get it. And then I mean, just 19 ha-ha-ha-ha-has or whatever. He's not even watching it. So he doesn't even know what happened.
I had no idea what had happened.
And doesn't it just have to have been Florida State to do that particular maneuver this year? What's wrong with them?
And Clemson, both teams, I mean, are teams that are just completely puzzling, right?
We now know what it takes to get Clemson to score 30.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the second one was UTEP. I had an under 50. UTEP scored 2 touchdowns in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. The second one, after they recovered an onside kick, they had a long touchdown right after that, like a 50-yard touchdown. Just kind of broke my heart on that one. And then Missouri. Oh my gosh, Missouri. I had the under in that game. They scored a 45-yard touchdown pass like as time expired in the first half. And then they had the ball with 3 minutes left. They just had to run the clock out, and they break a 75-yard run, scored 3-yard touchdown on the next play, and the under is a loser there. So I just had 3 just really bad beats kind of in my afternoon that kind of completely flipped my day.
And I think you seem to be at a higher percentage of those long touchdown runs that don't seem to matter, because there's a lot of them that happen, but they don't affect the spread or the total that much. And I feel like you've kind of been on the wrong side of that. So that'll bounce back, right? It's been rough.
And cousin Jack asked, or cousin Jack.
I'm in the family now.
Hey, there you go.
So Jack mentioned last weck, what's the fetish with the unders, and the unders have been really good to me, but that's the risk you run when you bet so many unders like that. Is one big play to end the game right there can kind of ruin everything. So I think I am an exhibit A for the dangers of some of these unders.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was the after dark something that was not very kind. Kicking off not very well, while Ole Miss is just shooting themselves in the foot left and right. I feel like Ole Miss was the right side in that game. If they had just not made so many mistakes, failed fourth downs, that's kind of happening as the after dark slate gets going, and I lose 3 of those 4. It turned a great day into still a winning day. So it was still a winning Saturday for me. So that was good. But I mean, giving back a chunk of the profits was a little frustrating. So that was what was bad for me. But let's close out last week's recap and have a better taste in our mouths. Cousin Jared, what was the best thing for you about the previous week of football?
Well, the best thing for me, and it's not really about the previous week, it's about Tuesday, is I'm very interested to see what the playoff committee is going to be saying about the top 4. We're going to have the usual suspects there, the Alabamas, the Georgias, teams like that. But where's Cincinnati going to be? Where's Michigan State going to be? Where's Oregon going to be with that victory over Ohio State, but has looked shaky, in places otherwise? So personally, it feels to me like, come talk to me in a few weeks and this could be all of the same players and we're just, repeating all this over again from the past few years. But right now, I feel like there's more uncertainty around who's going to be in the playoff than usual for this time of year.
Yeah. And what's up?
My bold prediction is that Cincinnati is going to be no better than 4th.
I would actually be ecstatic if they're 4th. I'm worried they're going to be like 5th or 6th.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm worried that's what they're going to try and do, and that's just I'm already annoyed.
Yeah,
about something that hasn't happened yet and might not happen, but I'm already mad.
Yeah. So we're gonna get this out to you, the listener, on Monday morning. So or late Sunday night, depending on what time zone you're in. And if if you're listening to us before then, you can kind of debate along. If you're listening to us afterwards, you already know what's happened. I kind of my only pushback on that is I feel like we spend way too much time hand-wringing over this, and 9 times out of 10, all sorts of chaotic things happen and make it kind of a as Joey on Friends said, a moo point, right? Where it doesn't really matter. So I hope it doesn't.
Just because the data has consistently corrected our very poor priors in the past, Professor, doesn't mean that we should still continue to make this mistake.
I agree. And it's a fine line between how much we should care about something that's not going to matter versus we should still get it right. I'm hoping that Cincinnati can make it. I think we're all kind of rooting for that. They went out and there's no controversy. I think they should clearly be ahead of Oregon. I think they should clearly be ahead of Michigan State. They're not ahead of Michigan State in my ratings, but my ratings are trying to account for how a team is playing today because we're betting the games today. My ratings are not built to say how it's not a resume. My ratings are just saying right now, what do I think you are? And I think I don't think Cincinnati's a top 4 team if you look at right now today how good you are, but the playoff isn't about how good you are today. In my opinion, it's about the full resume. And And I guess that's probably part of the problem we have with the ratings on this. We've never really established what they're trying to do, but that's a different discussion for a different day.
And the playoff committee goes back and forth. Sometimes
right, every year
it
they
seems like a
change their
resume
rankings,
thing,
yes,
and sometimes
yes.
it seems like a who's best right now.
Yes, they pick whatever criteria suits whatever they want to do, which is I think
Right.
the overall most frustrating thing. But we're in the best part of the segment. We're not supposed to be on the downer segment right now.
Shout outs to the guys at the Baylor Texas game who are dressed up as Phineas and Ferb for Halloween, and like the heads that were a foot taller than their actual heads. And a bigger shout out to whoever was unfortunate enough to be sitting behind them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up here. The best thing for me, Old Dominion, first conference win since 2018. So kudos to you.
Hey.
You go some time like that without a conference win. I'll give you a little shout out there. So congrats to them. Moving on to this week, we're actually pulling our lines from DraftKings. This week, that's one of the books that more of our listeners have access to. So we're going to start off with the weeknight games of the week. There are a lot of them. We're going to talk about most of them, not all of them. But this is the segment where if you're listening to this on a Saturday morning, we either look like geniuses or fools, maybe a little bit of both. I have a lot of plays here. Jared, I know you have a couple things to say about a few of them, but we're going to kind of more rapid fire a couple of the MACtion games. Tuesday night, there's two of them that I like. The first one is Ball State at Akron. Ball State is a 19.5-point favorite. I am taking Akron at 19.5 points. That is a lot of points. The model thinks it should only be 15.5. So I'm taking the points there with the home team, just hoping that they can keep it respectable. This feels like one of those games where it's either close, it's interesting, it's an easy winner, or Ball State just runs away with them. I'm just not sure Ball State has the firepower for that. I don't think they're very good. So I'm taking the 19.5 with Akron. And then Tuesday, I'm also laying the 7 points with Miami of Ohio at regular Ohio. The model thinks it should be, thanks for the laughs there, guys. The model thinks it should be a 13.5-point spread. So I'm laying the 7 there. Moving on to Wednesday, Northern Illinois at Kent State. Kent State is a 4.5-point favorite. And Jared, I think you have a play on this one for us.
Yeah, I'm taking the 4.5 points with Northern Illinois. That's an official play for me. Toledo, they're usually going to outclass most of the teams in the MAC, but the results just haven't been there for them this year. They've won some games, sure, but they've played a lot of close games that they shouldn't have been really close at all. So, I feel like Northern Illinois getting 4.5 points on the road. They've been playing pretty well. They can put up some points. They've had some high scoring games this year. So I just feel good about taking the 4.5 points from Northern Illinois.
Did you mention Toledo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I?
I think you said Toledo.
Who did I say?
You said Toledo. They're at Kent State, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Well, even better. Yeah. Sorry. So that was wrong. Kent State. Yeah, for sure. Kent State can't stop anybody half the time. So yeah, still feel good with 4.5 points in Northern Illinois. Let's keep this in, guys. People are getting all the unfiltered truth here. Okay.
If you would lay 4.5 points against a better team, you're laying 4.5 points now.
Yeah, for sure.
We're getting the 4.5 points. Man, we're off to a rough start here.
Yeah, taking the 4.5 points here.
Yeah, this is one of those things where when they when you listen to other podcasts, you hear these things and people say, just leave it in. You wonder how much to leave out. We're leaving the whole thing in there. I'm panic looking at my phone here. I'm going, wait. Who's Toledo playing?
Look, we're chalking this up to the first week of MACtion, right? There's too many MAC games to keep track.
Yes, and they're all there's 3 Tuesdays.
I think the entire conference is playing on a weeknight. So we're going to chalk this up to the first week of MACtion. We're going to move on. We're going to keep it all in. Y'all are going to see how the sausage is made here. Yeah,
I like it, and that's what they do, right? With MACtion, they get to November and they play all the games in the week, and that way nobody gets this weird having to have a bye game. You can't play Saturday, Wednesday, right? And so you can't figure out the whole bye situation. So yeah, they get really wonky here. Get some TV revenue though. I'm with you though. I am taking the 4.5 points with Northern Illinois since they are playing at Kent State, right? Not Toledo. The model thinks it should be about a pick 'em. I have this as Northern Illinois is the better team in this game. Yes, they're on the road, but they're the better team. So giving me more than a field goal here. I like this play a lot. So not a best bet. I've got tons of those later, but just a regular play for me. I'm taking the 4.5 with Northern Illinois. And then one more MACtion game here for us on Wednesday night, Central Michigan at Western Michigan. Western Michigan is a 10-point favorite. I'm taking the 10 points with Central Michigan as the model thinks it should only be a 5-point spread. So taking the double digits there. I like that play. Moving to Thursday, there's just one game, Georgia State at Louisiana. Louisiana is an 11.5-point favorite. What's your take for us on this one, Jared?
No official play here for me, but I'm worried that I'm going to regret not taking the points in this spot because Louisiana has done this all year. I don't know what their record is against the spread. It cannot be very good. The only game that they've really showed up for this year was that game against App State, where they just completely blew them out. Shocking to me. Anyway, I'm probably going to regret that. Not taking the points there because Louisiana, every other game they've played has been close, but I just can't bring myself to do it because Louisiana is just so much better than all the other teams that they've been playing.
Yeah, and it's tough to figure out against the spread record, right? Because which book are you using, midweek line, early line, closing line, etc. The numbers that when I have pulled them, I have Louisiana as covered 3 times. So 2 other games that they did actually cover. But yeah, that's a small number at this point in the season for a team that we thought was going to be pretty good. I'm actually laying the 11.5 with Louisiana. The model thinks it should be 14.5. But I don't love it for the exact reasons you talked about. This is one of those where mathematically, anytime I see a 3-point difference between the numbers, especially crossing key numbers like 13 and 14, usually this would be a best bet. That would be best bet territory here. But for the exact reasons you mentioned, I can't bring myself to do it. So it's just a standard play for me. I'm going to trust the model, and I'm going to say that the math is it's figuring that out, right? It's accounting for that. And so it still thinks that Louisiana should be more than a 2-touchdown favorite. So I'm laying the 11.5, but you make an excellent point there, of course. And then Friday, we have a Pac-12 after dark game here, Utah at Stanford. Cousin Jared, what is your play?
So I added this pick late right before we recorded. I was having an internal fight with myself. My heart is telling me that I should not lay a touchdown on the road with any team in the Pac-12. That's just not a good thing to do. But my mind is telling me, what have I seen from Stanford that makes me think they can stay within a touchdown of Utah? And the answer is you've got the USC game. Who knows anything about USC, right? And you've got the Oregon game.
Look, we're gonna look in Oregon. It's a good point, but Oregon's been confusing. We're gonna look back at that Stanford USC game as one of the most confusing games of the year.
Are we at the point in the season where we can just arbitrarily ignore a quarter of the schedule?
I don't know.
With certain teams that are confusing, maybe.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where my heart's just telling me I can't lay 7 points on the road in the Pac-12, but my mind is just telling me I have not seen anything that would make me think that, Utah is, I think they're just going to blow them away. So official play for me, I'm laying the 7 points with Utah. I'm sure I'll look dumb next week, but I'm just going to go with my brain here, and it's telling me Stanford just has no way of keeping this close.
Hey, I like it. It's a best bet for me. I'm laying the 7 with Utah. It's a best bet at 7, nothing more, because that push protection, they could easily win by 7. If it gets under 7, I like it even more. The model thinks it should be 10.5. I think we nailed this last week. If you listen to our After Dark segment, we're talking about Washington and Stanford. We talked about the fact that if Washington hadn't had such a bad first half against Arizona, that Washington would have been a 3-point favorite. Washington goes into Stanford last week and takes care of business. Close game, but wins by a touchdown in the end. And I think Utah's a much better team than Washington. I think Utah's playing really well. I was really impressed with what they did against UCLA last week. UCLA's defense obviously isn't great, but Utah just looked unstoppable. I think
since they've made the quarterback switch, it's just been night and day.
Yeah. And so it's the first of many best bets for me. I know it's a Pac-12 game, so it makes it a little bit scarier, but I'm just with you. I just don't think Stanford has what they need here to hang in this game against the Utes. So that wraps us up for the weeknight games of the week. Moving on to games you care about. These are the games that you don't want to miss for one reason or another. I'm going to start off with the game that you might want to miss, but you're not going to miss it to start off with because it starts 30 minutes earlier than usual. So flip over from game day, stop listening to those guys. Yeah, they made that show like 6 hours long anyway, right? There's football starting half an hour earlier in Arlington, Air Force versus Army. Cousin Jared, what is your take on this one with Air Force being a short 2.5-point favorite?
Official play from me here. I'm laying the 2.5 points with Air Force. Love the Colorado Springs area. Air superiority is the most important thing that you can have in the military these days. I'm laying the 2.5 points with Air Force, feeling good about it. But on a little bit more serious note, not much more. I feel like Air Force's level of competition this year has just been a little bit higher than that of what Army has played. So, I feel like I would feel more uncomfortable if this was like 3.5 or 4. Then I would say, I don't know, but 2.5. I'm taking Air Force.
There is no air superiority to be found in this matchup. This ball's going to be thrown like 4 times.
And that's the way that football is meant to be played, right? I mean, 3 yards in the
all
cloud.
right. So it's a best bet for me. The model thinks this should be 5.5. We talked about this on a previous episode, the types of teams that are going to give Air Force trouble. It's teams that pass the ball. Army obviously is not going to do that. So I think it's strength on strength. And I think that favors Air Force as opposed to if you can go strength on weakness, that's where they're going to really struggle. Note, and this is where, DraftKings has a little bit of some different odds. Note that this official pick is -2.5. It is -120. So I do want to make everyone aware of that. If it's a -115 or a -105, I'm not going to touch on it in the podcast. All of this stuff is in the Google sheet. It all is on. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on BetStamp as well. So we're tracking all of that stuff. I like it at -3 regular. So a lot of places have it -3 with your standard juice. I still like it as a best bet there. I do not like it at a best bet any more than that. It would just be regular play. So again, I don't try to prognosticate where exactly the lines are going to go. More times than not, they go the direction my model thinks, but not always. So I like it at 3. I like it at 2.5 juiced, which is what we are officially taking here. Another best bet for me there. Sticking in the DFW Metroplex area, Baylor at TCU. Baylor is at this moment a 6.5 point favorite. They opened shorter than that, but money keeps coming in on the Bears. Cousin Jared, what is your play for us on this one?
So official play for me here, I'm taking the under 59. I was probably going to lay the points with Baylor because it was open around 5 or so, went to 5.5. I probably would have laid the points even up to 6, but then it crossed over 6, got to 6.5. And with the news of Patterson being let go, just broke a few hours ago, I just don't know if I feel comfortable laying the 6 points on the road with Baylor there, but I do feel comfortable with the under. I think both of these defenses can make it a little bit more difficult, for the offenses. So I feel pretty safe with the under 59 here.
I have no problems laying the points with Baylor here. Official play for me. And I know this number is probably going to go up later in the week because, TCU just lost their coach that's been around since I was in junior high.
20 years.
Yeah. But I think it has to get a lot higher before I start to get nervous. I think Baylor is by far the better team, and TCU has been playing like absolute garbage recently. These two teams love each other, as I think we all know. There's just a huge old pile of Christian love here, and I think it would be easy for Baylor to overlook a team the way TCU is playing right now, but since it's TCU, I don't think they're going to.
I think you're right there. The rivalry, right, is the best again I've heard for this one. The model thinks this should be Baylor -11.5, which is nowhere near 6.5. It's an official pick for me. I also am laying the 6.5. This was going to be a best bet for me, especially at 6 or under until the Patterson news broke. So if you're, depending on when you're listening to this, if you've seen that or not, Gary Patterson is leaving TCU. They decided that it was best for the program to go in a different direction, partially because of what you said, Jack, how poor TCU has been playing, not just this year, but the last several years. He decided he didn't want to stick around, that it was best just to move on. It's not a best bet simply because I don't know how TCU is going to react. We talked about this with Washington State, right? And Washington State got me to the runway easily last week, right? And there was the whole, oh, well, how are they going to look, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't know. I don't want to say that they will quit or won't quit on something like this because I really don't know. I think every time you try to peg one of those, you're just flipping a coin.
You got Jerry Kill as the interim, who by all accounts seems like a really nice guy. That's not the kind of guy you want coaching in this rivalry game.
Well, but you just never know. To me, it's more about the practices this week, right? We don't know how the players, what they thought of Patterson. We don't know how focused they are, we don't, I mean, all these guys are still playing for jobs for this year. They're playing to try to get drafted. They're playing for jobs for next year. So I have no idea how they're going to react. It just adds a layer of uncertainty for me, is the only reason it's not a best bet. But yes, especially when this number was 5, 5.5, even 6 before the Pat issue news, this was an easy best bet. I thought this number was foolish. I still think it's foolish, but that extra bit of variability, I have enough best bets we'll get to later that I'm just going to make this a standard play, Baylor -6.5. One more game here in this segment in the state of Texas. Cousin Jared, your alma mater, Texas A&M, is a home 4-point favorite to Auburn. What you got for us here?
Yeah, so official play for me here. I'm taking the 4 points with Auburn. I really don't know what to make of this game. I think it's going to be lower scoring. About the only thing I trust is A&M's defense. I do trust A&M's defense to keep Auburn's offense pretty well in check. But what you're going to get from the A&M offense, I could not tell you. If I could, I'd be lying. So I think this has a chance of being a pretty, volatile game. It could be low scoring. We could, A&M could break off some big runs. Auburn could get some explosive plays. Do you know Auburn hasn't lost in College Station since A&M joined the SEC? Like, I could tell you exactly how every Gus Malzahn coached Auburn team was going to open up the game at A&M in College Station, and it was like the perfect script every single time offensively for Auburn. So, without him there, I feel a little bit better about A&M's chances, but I think there's just too much variability in this game. I think having the 4 points in your pocket, you're going to feel pretty good about that. If that's not your cup of tea, I would also look at like the under 50 here. That would be another thing I would probably endorse. But, in a game like this where anything can happen, I say give me the 4 points.
Are you going to be in attendance at this game?
I will be in attendance.
Yes. So rooting interest will be conflicted.
Yeah.
There.
I can confirm the stat. Like, Auburn has not lost in College Station since this series became a conference game, but Auburn has only won in Auburn once.
Yeah, the road team.
So the road team seems to do
been an advantage in this series for sure.
To be fair, probably doesn't mean a lot because most of these, it's different coaches and different players. So that probably doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
A small amount, but it's a best bet for me. Auburn +4. The model thinks it should be a pick 'em, so it's just too much of a difference. I agree with everything you said there, Cousin Jared. I think this is gonna be a tight game. I think either team could easily win by 3, and so give me 4 points all day long. This is a complete toss-up game. So yeah, best bet Auburn +4 for me. Sticking in the SEC, Mississippi State, coming off of a big win against Kentucky, is at an Arkansas team that seems to be fading a little bit here. Arkansas is a 5.5-point favorite. Cousin Jared, what do you have for us here?
Official play for me, I am taking the 5.5 points in Mississippi State. I feel like I have underestimated Mississippi State all season, and I think what did it for me was the loss to LSU. I think I kind of just disregarded them after the loss to LSU.
Especially because we both had them on that one, I think.
Yeah. And then Arkansas, flipped the script. I felt really good after I called them covering against Texas. I told everybody here, take the points with Arkansas when they were playing A&M. And I think just because I had been right about Arkansas, I kind of elevated
in 2 big
them.
games.
Yeah, and I kind of elevated them higher than I should, and they've been knocked down a few pegs since then. So this is just more of, I've been wrong on Mississippi State. In the past few weeks, I've been wrong on Arkansas. So usually I would have said, oh yeah, Arkansas here, but I've just been so wrong. I'm just flipping around. I'm saying, hey, I'm taking the 5.5 points in Mississippi State.
We need to have we've got a couple of new segments this week. I'm excited to unveil. We need to have a segment of picks we're going to regret, not making. We've talked about a lot, or picks that we regret not making. Maybe we should add it to the recap. I regret not taking Mississippi State last week. Someone had made a comment on the video about that game, and I specifically said, it's typed out in the comments if you want to go for last week. I said Mississippi State's the right side. I said people are, disillusioned with Kentucky, but they're not really that good this game. And Mississippi State, I said under a field goal. I said Mississippi State's the right play, and I kept eyeing it all week. If you looked at the spreadsheet, I had it highlighted because it was one of those that I was like, I'm going to make the play. I'm going to make the play, just looking for the right number, and I just couldn't talk myself into it. And I was so frustrated when that game started. Kentucky just couldn't do anything. Mississippi State's a pretty solid team, and I regret not doing that. I regretted it after the first quarter, basically. I'm with you. This is a best bet for me, Mississippi State plus 5.5. I think we just talked about this game. This game and the Auburn A&M game are going to be mirror images of each other.
Yeah.
The model thinks it should also be a pick'em as well, and you're giving me way too many points. So best bet on Auburn, best bet on Mississippi State for the same reasons. You're giving me way too many points in what it should be a toss-up game where the road team is the better team, balancing out with the home field edge. I give 2.5 for most home fields. I give 3 for the big ones. I give 3 for Arkansas. And I still think this should be a coin toss game. So, yeah, best bet for me here on Mississippi State. Again, not trying to say that Auburn or Mississippi State for sure will win. It's just you got a lot of value there, getting more than a field goal in a game that is probably going to be relatively low scoring, could easily end at 3 or 4. So tons of value there. Moving on, Clemson, a 3.5 point favorite at Louisville. Clemson team that everybody's talking about every single week. We for sure are here way too often. We already covered their game last week against Florida State. Finally getting a cover if you had the 9.5.
Yeah.
We had 10s on this one, so we pushed. Cousin Jared, what is your play on this one?
So number one, I think this is a bad matchup for Louisville because Louisville likes to run the ball. And of all of the things that we've said about Clemson this year, stopping the run has not been, a weakness. That's definitely been one of their strong points. The other thing is, especially early in the season, Louisville was kind of the remedy. If your offense wasn't hitting on all cylinders, go play Louisville and you were going to be able to fix some things. So, naturally, that was kind of my first inclination was I need to lay the 3.5 points with Clemson here. And Professor, sorry, I did not give you a heads up on this. But do you have your rankings, at the tips of your fingers here?
I can get there quickly.
Okay, so
keep talking and I'll get there.
Yes, so I do have the rankings pulled up. I see Pitt is ranked number 10 in your rankings.
Yep, Clemson 16.
Okay, Clemson 16. Where would Louisville be?
How far do I have to
45th.
45th, yeah.
45th. This is the exact same line we had on the Pitt game. Why like your rankings just do not seem to make this match up, right?
I'm glad you went that way instead of being like your rankings don't make sense on the podcast about the model-based choices.
Okay, well, okay, yeah.
No, Pitt was favored in that game.
Yes, but 3.5 points with Clemson. I just it's not
being close to a field goal when you've got a Pittsburgh team that's much better than Louisville.
Yes, exactly.
And to be fair, and you're right. To be fair, that one I took Pitt. I laid the 3.5. I said it should be like 10. Pittsburgh killed them. And I regretted not making it a best bet. I even tweeted that I was going to regret not. That was again back to the we should pick segment of picks we're going to regret. That would make no sense.
Let's not rehash it though. If not for the interception being thrown directly at the line, maybe I would have been the one covering on that.
The more interesting thing on this one is you try to figure out Clemson zigzagging like every week and being like they're going to cover, they're not going to cover, they're going to cover, they're not going to cover, and not knowing what's happening.
And every time that I faded Clemson this year, I've been right. In the push last week. But anyway, moral of the story is official play for me. I'm laying the 3.5 points with Clemson here. This doesn't seem to add up based on how Clemson played against Pitt. Pitt being 10th in your rankings and Louisville not being there. So I'm laying the 3.5 points with Clemson.
Yeah, it's a lean for me. So I am also on Clemson minus 3.5, but a smaller unit bet there. The model thinks it should be 4.5. Kind of like you said, I think it's a bad matchup for Louisville. I think Clemson is one of those teams that, given what they've done, they probably win this game by 3 and just piss us all off because that's what Clemson has done all season. Again, I'm hoping they can win by 4, they win by 7. So it's a lean simply because I can't trust this Clemson team. It's also a lean because it's at 3.5. If it does get down to 3, it's a pick that I can endorse a little bit more. But yeah, that's Again, we'll talk about Clemson. I'm sure they'll do something wonky. We'll be talking way more than we should about them next week. So that's just what tends to happen.
They may have the most dedicated talk time on this podcast.
They're definitely up there. There's a couple others that we'll talk about later that get up there, but they're easily top 5 if someone was to break that down. Moving on to a team that we've talked about for a decade now and counting, Jack, Boise State. Your background here for us. Boise State at Fresno State. Fresno State is a 5-point favorite, and the backstory behind why that's Jack's background is because, of course, if you are a new listener, Jack and I go way back and have had our struggles with Boise, not being able to figure them out one way or the other for years now. Cousin Jared takes Boise last week. I back him as well. I take Boise as well. They struggle, and then early on the group text is we're just having a blast with it. Of you know, Jared's finally getting the Boise treatment, or what did Boise cover for us? We got the one with Boise, but I think that's why the background's there, because Boise's been a fun team historically for us.
I'm so disappointed that cover happened, because I wanted Jared to start his Boise chant.
Oh no! But that's the whole thing, guys. I figured Boise out. I told you last week. It's Jekyll and Hyde. Last week you got the good Boise, so let's flip it around here. You're getting bad Boise this week. And here's the secret, to our listeners, if you didn't watch the Boise State, I'll tell you what happened. You didn't really get good Boise last week. You got like a quarter and a half of good Boise, and that was enough to cover against Colorado State. Boise State played terribly that whole first half of that game. So flip it around here. I think you're going to get bad Boise this week. Also helps, I think they're playing a very good Fresno State game. Professor, you talked about, you should have made that Mississippi State play last week. I was kicking myself. I kept waiting on Fresno last week.
We talked about it throughout the week
and then the line crossed 0. Fresno became favored, and I was like, I just can't do it, and I should have done it. So I'm not making that mistake again. Official play from me here. I'm laying the 5 points with Fresno State.
And while we're here, just as FYI for our listeners, I don't know. This year has been weird. Usually, they always talk about not chasing steam, right? And you don't want to chase steam necessarily. What that means, of course, is if you like a team, if you're looking at a line and you see -3, and then it jumps out to -4, just because people are betting it, doesn't mean like that's the for sure right side to lay the 4, because sometimes that is the right side, but sometimes it'll land at 3 and they got it at a number where they had the push protection and you've lost that, or lands at 4 and they've got the win and now you just pushed and held your money up for no reason, right? So they always talk about don't chase team. You have all these things that are your normal betting, tips and tricks or whatever, but this year has been so weird with so many times the direction the money has moved has lost. And so, when you're talking about this, I'm just sitting there going, we've learned this lesson that this year you can't really trust the whole, money's coming on this side. What's that mean? Or should I be afraid or whatever? Because it's like, I think this year it's felt like all that just gets thrown out the window. It's meant nothing,
Yeah.
Jack, you have any other Boise thing you want to add here?
Oh, Godspeed, Jared. If you've cracked Boise after 1 week after the professor and I have failed for 10 years, I'm just going to go walk in the lake by my house.
Oh yeah. Well, see, I won't be here next week, guys. So you can just bask in my failure. If Boise covers next week, feel free to throw me under the bus.
Hey, it'll be me there with you. I also am laying the 5 with Fresno State official pick. The model thinks this should be 7.5. So the model thinks it should be over a touchdown. I think that Fresno winning by 6 or 7 is very likely in this game. I echo everything you said there, Jared. Sometimes your analysis is interesting. It's a different take. It's something I hadn't considered, but those are the exact points that I would have made as well. Boise looked bad last week. Fresno was really good. I was really impressed with them last week against San Diego State. At home, I think they are a much better team. I think this number is, I think this line, I think one of two things happens. I think either this, I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to prognosticate where the line's going to go. Either A, the line's going to get to 7. And I'm going to say that's where it should be. It should be sitting at 7. B, the line's not going to get to 7, and it's not getting there because there's so much name recognition on the Boise of old. And this Boise team isn't bad, but they are not as good as some of those previous iterations. So, either way, I think Fresno -5, if it's -5.5, even at -6, I think is a solid play. So official play for me as well, Fresno -5.
And just for anybody who hasn't watched Boise this year, like I think specifically about what's different, their offense is just not what we're used to seeing from a Boise offense.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about taking the points with Boise, may I suggest the Boise money line? Because I think this is going to be one of those games where they either lose by 14 or find a way to beat Fresno.
Yep. Good take. We're going to wrap up the games you care about segment with one very near and dear to Jack's heart here. Oklahoma State at West Virginia. Oklahoma State is a 2.5 point road favorite. Jack, I'm going to let you kick us off on this one.
Oh gosh, playing Kansas for homecoming masks a lot of ills, guys.
It does.
And just because they beat Kansas by 52, doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden a much better team than the team that still couldn't kick a stupid field goal in Ames, Iowa. And getting to West Virginia is a pretty difficult road trip for the Big 12. I think between the possible little overcorrection from Oklahoma State finally destroying somebody and the relatively difficult time they have in Morgantown, I think there's value here in taking the points. So official pick for me, I'm gonna take West Virginia here, and wonder if my team is ever really going to figure out how to beat someone that isn't Kansas.
Jared, what do you want to add on that one?
So I said last week that I'm done with West Virginia, and then they beat Iowa State, and I'm sticking to my word. I'm done with West Virginia. I'm not touching this game. I mean, this, there's no way I would take West Virginia in this spot. My heart's telling me you need to take Oklahoma State, but I'm just not touching any West Virginia games. I'm done with them.
Hey, good for you for sticking with that. I had West Virginia at +7 last week. I thought they would keep it close. I like the push protection. Of course, they won by 7. Did get a little help from the refs on a couple of plays there in that game if you watched it, but they were definitely the right side. They were in that game, and they should not have been getting that many points. But I'm passing on this one. The model makes this 1.5, so I'm holding off. If it gets to West Virginia +3, I would take the +3. So we'll see where the line goes.
I think the Big 12 refs Twitter handle was it feels weird to be helping Iowa State, and then 10 minutes later it was that's more like it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to a new segment this week. I'm calling this the Big 3. This is where we discuss the difficulties in handicapping the outliers at the top of the rankings. Specifically, almost every computer system will say to fade these 3 teams every single week to a sub-500 record. So I want to talk about them specifically right here. First off, we have Missouri at Georgia. Georgia is a 38-point favorite. Because Jared, what is your take on this game?
So my take on this game is I have watched an abnormal amount of Missouri football this year. Missouri,
why, man?
Yeah. Gambling will do weird things to you, right? So Missouri. I'm not sure Missouri could stop the 3 of us from rushing for 100 yards against them. They're really bad.
On how many carries? Because yes, if you give us enough carries, sure.
I mean,
I'm not getting that many carries.
Legitimately, 25 maybe. It's not good. Anyway, the moral of the story is here. If Georgia wanted to score 56 points in this game, I think they could. But I have not seen anything from Georgia this season that makes me think they're going to do that. So there's no way I'm taking the points with Missouri, but at the same time, there's no way I feel comfortable laying that many points with Georgia, because they just don't care. They'll get up, 24-0, 31-0, and then just they'll sit on it the rest of the game. So
why does Georgia have to strain itself right now?
Exactly.
They're the objectively number 1 team in the country right now. All they have to do is not get hurt before they play Bama.
Yeah. So just I'm not touching this game.
Okay, so a couple things here. First off, if you watched any of that Missouri Vanderbilt game last week, I'm kind of with you, Jack. Why? I did, but again, like you said, this business will get you doing some weird things. Every time you looked up, Vanderbilt was running for 70 yards, and Vanderbilt
they could not stop the Vanderbilt quarterback. They could not stop him on the ground.
Yeah, and so here's the thing: is I think you're right. I think if Georgia wanted to, they could score 156 points in this game. I mean, a little bit of exaggeration, obviously, but not that much. Yeah. I think the thing is I think you make a good point, but Georgia's going to put their backups in. What are they going to do? They're going to run the ball. They're going to end up with 60-yard runs. They're not going to be trying to. The guy's not going to stop. This isn't a video game, right? Where you can control it and be like, it's up. I'm just going to hit the X button to dive. Yeah. Those guys want to score. Those backups, they're going to go score. The model thinks this should be 35.5. And as we talked about, these systems, my system is no different. They're built to make all these comparisons within teams, but when you get to the top, the problem is the systems can't move these teams light years ahead to show you what they're going to do against the bad teams. because then it's going to be too far off when they play the just below them team. So these models have a really hard time with these teams. So anytime I see a number that's this close, I kind of think maybe you should lay the points. The strategies worked pretty well for me before. And so I'm leaning towards Georgia. So a small pick here at Georgia minus 38. And like I said, I think it's the spot here. I think those backup running backs are just going to have a field day against Missouri. So I think to me, this is one of those 56-0 type games where they just accidentally score there, 55, nothing, something like that. I think they can cover 30. Just a lean though, because it is a really big number. So it's not a normal sized play for me. The second team in this discussion, some people have Ohio State second, some people have Alabama second with regards to who the second best team is going forward here. So Ohio State is a 14.5-point favorite at Nebraska. Cousin Jared, what is your pick on this one?
Yeah, so this was another late ad for me. So official play, I'm laying the 14.5 points with Ohio State. And especially like the Big Ten East, like all of those teams, like they're good, but they all kind of have their flaws. And so like I just glossed over this line when I first saw it. But then I asked myself, is Nebraska closer to Penn State, or is Nebraska closer to insert every other team that Ohio State played the past month? Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana. I think Nebraska's closer to those other three teams, and none of those games were remotely close. And I think the Penn State game, was probably a wake-up call for Ohio State. So official play for me here, I'm laying the 14.5 points. I think Ohio State's going to blow them out of the water like they did, these other teams they've been playing the past month previous to Penn State.
Yeah, it's an official play for me as well. Ohio State minus 14.5. Take everything I just said on the Missouri-Georgia game and add it here, except now it's not just that my model is off by a few points. The model is pretty close on this one. That tells me that Ohio State is the right side on this one. The model says 15, but again, I think it's more than that. I think you make some good points there. Cousin Jared, I don't think that Nebraska is necessarily closer to the Indianas of the world than Penn State. I might say they're kind of about in between. And if you take those score lines and you average them out, then Ohio State wins this game by 28-31, maybe even 24, something like that. But I think 14.5 is an easy number for them to cover. I think up until this gets to 17, I think it's an easy play. Beyond that, it starts getting dicey, right? They could easily win by 17 or 18 or something like that. But I do think it's very possible that they just knock the doors out of Nebraska. And at what point does Nebraska quit? We keep talking about it. I don't want to predict it.
You guys want to hear a fun fact for anyone who's not a Nebraska fan?
Oh, goodness.
In the last 5 games between Ohio State and Nebraska, Ohio State has won by margins of 35, 41, 5, 42, and 59. This is a team that is very good at destroying Nebraska.
Yeah, and I don't see it being a 5-point game either on this one, but so official pick for me here, Ohio State minus 14.5. And the last of our big three, Alabama, another team the model just doesn't really know how to handle. Alabama is a 28.5-point favorite. Not just 28, you get the hook as well. 28.5-point favorite at home against LSU. This is not the game of the century, folks. This might get ugly here. Cousin Jared, what's your pick?
I had to do a double take when I saw this line because this was just not what I was expecting. So official play from me here, I'm taking the 28.5 points with LSU. I mean, what does LSU have to lose, right? I mean, the coach is gone. It's going to be really tough for them to make a bowl game at this point. I think they're going to play with a reckless abandon. That could go terribly wrong, but it also could go right. I think the games that LSU has to look out for the rest of the season, I don't have their schedule pulled up in front of me, but like the Kentucky game, like it's Kentucky, like who cares, right? Like they're going to be up to play Alabama. So when you're excited about the game, you have no reason not to just pull every trick out of the hat that you possibly could.
You had a bye last week, and Alabama had a bye too, but Alabama wasn't using their bye week to prep for LSU. LSU was using their bye week to prep for Alabama.
Yeah. I'm going to take the 28.5 points here, and Alabama could win by, 35, or I don't think they win by 42. Alabama could cover this number, but I think LSU is going to pull out every trick they have to keep it close. They may lose by 21. If they do, that's fine. I'll get to the window with it. So I'm taking the 28.5.
It's a crying shame that we actually don't have Les Miles in this situation, because that would be like must-watch football. Like, what is Les going to try to do to win or lose this game by 100?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and I'm with you. I'm also official pick taking LSU plus 28.5. The model thinks it should be 22.5. So we talked about the model not knowing how to handle these teams, but in this one, it's so far off. I think LSU is the right side here, especially from the hook at 28.
Yeah.
You still like it, but I mean, you could easily push. I mean, I could easily see this being a game that's 56-28 or something crazy where Bama can score at will, but LSU's pulling out all these wonky trick plays and stuff like that. But getting the hook is even better. So yeah, official pick for me, LSU getting all those points, just because it's such a discrepancy from where this number should be. If this number was 24, I'd say that's probably spot on.
Yeah,
but it's just too many points.
This is a game where I think you'll know at the end of the first quarter whether you're going to cover or not. Like if it's close, I think you're going to coast to a cover. If Alabama's up by 2 touchdowns in the first, you might.
To me, it feels like it's 21-0 after the first quarter, or it's 7-3, and you're like, okay, we're in this,
Yeah, you're selling this short. You might be outside of the number at the end of the first quarter.
But at 28.5, I mean, if it's 31 or 35-0,
it could happen. This is Saban we're talking about.
We did watch Virginia and BYU last week.
Oh, so gosh.
Not impossible.
That's true. Moving on to a new segment. I'm calling this Still Got Them Zeros. This is a segment where we talk about teams that still have a zero in either the win or the loss column. We're going to start off with the teams that have a zero where they want the zero, with the one that everyone's interested in here, where game day is at this week. Tulsa at Cincinnati. Hey, game day's going to be there, right? So that should be fun. Cincinnati is a 23-point favorite. The model thinks 26. So I'm laying the 23 as an official pick. I think that Cincinnati has struggled the last couple of weeks. I went against them last week and won pretty easily. In that game. The week before, Navy covered pretty easily against them as well. Game day's there this week. They need the style points. There's a decent chance after what happens with the playoff rankings, they need the style points even more.
Yeah, they could be very upset after the playoff rankings come out.
They could be very upset. So I think that this is the spot to lay the 23. I think this is a game where they win by 24, 27, 28, something in that ballpark. Are very reasonable options. Again, the model doesn't love laying big numbers, so the model thinks that Cincinnati should be minus 26. I think it's the right side, so I'm laying 23.
You guys carry on. I'm going to check the remaining schedule to see why they're not going to Cincinnati SMU. That would make a lot more sense.
Is that game in Cincinnati or at SMU?
It's in Cincinnati.
Oh, I mean, they may go back there.
Oh, well, Michigan State, Ohio State. That's probably good. Hello. Guest star by Newton.
Yeah.
What everyone in the pandemic has experienced. Cat walking across the video during a meeting.
Well, I think we'll touch on it later potentially, but there is a game where game day should be at this week, and it's not that one. So I'll address that.
Right. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll tease it this segment. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, who knows what's happening that week? Because there might be another big game that week that they're buying. Next game, Michigan State still undefeated. A team that we talked earlier about, Clemson, a team we've devoted a lot of time to. We devoted a lot of time to Michigan State because we have all been riding that train. I rode that train again last week against Michigan, and it got me to the window. This week, they are a short 2.5-point road favorite at a Purdue team that got a big win against Nebraska, but didn't really play that well. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this one?
I don't understand, and I feel like you could just replay every segment we've had with Michigan State lines for the entire season, and it's all just the same. I have no idea why these lines are the way they are. I can't remember, did you play them the first week against Northwestern? Did you play Northwestern?
No. See, we don't need to go that far back, because against Northwestern, I think, is when I said something like Michigan State might win 3 games this year.
Okay.
I took Northwestern in that first
and I had such hope for Northwestern.
Yeah.
Literally since then, we've been riding Michigan State the whole season, and these lines just don't make any sense. So I'm taking laying the 2.5 points of Michigan State here. I think it's way too easy. I don't know what's going on. Official play for me.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard to jump on a moving train, but this Michigan State train is moving so slowly that even I can jump on this one. We all watched the game last week, right? Against Michigan. Like what are we seeing that what are you guys in particular seeing that no one else is seeing? Official pick for me. I'm laying the points as well. Like, I'm in.
Yeah,
Why
it
shouldn't
doesn't
I
make
be?
any, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Best bet, y'all know where we were going with this. All of us love Michigan State. We've been loving Michigan State. We've loved them for weeks now. Like, so we got on early, and there's no reason to get off now. Not at this number. My model thinks it should be 9. I know it's a road game. You talk about letdown spot or whatever. Look, you're undefeated. You're playing for the playoff. There's no letdown spot here. Like, so don't give me that nonsense.
You get Ohio State in 2 weeks. You can't let them now.
Yeah. At 3, this is a best bet. Even up to a touchdown, I think it's still a solid play. Once you get to a touchdown on the road, it's tougher. But I mean, this line doesn't make any sense. And look, I'll acknowledge my ratings. I have Michigan State number 4. I am higher on them than probably anybody else, and I'll own that. That's every model has outliers, right? But my model is built to say, where should you be based off how you're playing right now? And it's looking at what Michigan State's doing, and it's continuing to give them credit. They deserve it. And I don't understand why no one else is saying what we are. So surely we aren't the only ones banging this drum, but we are banging it pretty hard. So best bet for Michigan State -2.5 at Purdue. Another undefeated team, Wake Forest, still undefeated at North Carolina. North Carolina is a 2.5-point home favorite. So the books think that that Wake Forest is going to get their first loss this weekend. Cousin Jared, what do you think?
Wake Forest, I feel like, is just this steady team that you kind of know what you're getting every week, and they just keep plugging along. And North Carolina has some good highs, but man, when North Carolina goes low, they go way low. So official play for me here, I'm taking the 2.5 points with Wake Forest. This seems, too easy to me. I would take the 2.5 points personally, but if you wanted to sprinkle some money on Wake Forest in the money line, that's fine. I think this is going to be a high scoring game, and maybe the odds of it landing within that 3, I would say, maybe whoever has the ball last wins. You get a touchdown, maybe the winner ends up winning by 6 or 7. So, if you want to even put some money on Wake Forest on the money line, I don't think that would be a bad bet. But official play for me, I'm taking the 2.5 points with Wake Forest.
Yeah, I don't know what the total is, but it will be a high-scoring game. Wake Forest, not the best defense in the world, but a fantastic offense.
Yeah, in the 70s, I believe.
Yeah, that seems right. I'd still, again, my model doesn't do totals, but I still would look over on that because I just don't see how anybody's going to get stops on this one. Both teams will play fast as well. I'm making this
76.
76. I would still take over. This feels like in the 80s or 90s for me, but that's just my opinion. Yeah. A best bet for me, Wake Forest +2.5. Love if you could get 3 on this one, but I'm not sure it's going to get there. My model thinks that Wake Forest should be a 4.5-point road favorite. My model's looking at North Carolina, kind of like you said, and there's some good moments, there's some bad moments. I don't trust that North Carolina can put it together for 60 minutes, and my model doesn't either. My model can't say, what if you only have the good plays and take out the bad plays and you put it all together? What are you going to do? Sure, if North Carolina puts it all together, they win this game, especially at home. But you can't count on that. You can't predict that. All I can do is use the past as my best predictor of the future. And North Carolina's, they're okay. They have some bad moments.
And that goes back to exactly what I said with Wake Forest. Like, you're going to get a solid 60 minutes from Wake Forest. I don't know if they've had like a 10-minute stretch of the season where they've just looked not good. They're solid every game.
And they've had really good injury luck so far this year. This is the part of the season where I thought they'd really struggle. A road game in Chapel Hill. We thought North Carolina would be better. We figured if Wake Forest has any injuries anywhere, this is a game where North Carolina just runs away with it. But Wake Forest has stayed relatively healthy. North Carolina isn't as good as we thought they would be. And so a game that early in the season, I would have said North Carolina wins this by 17. I think Wake Forest goes on the road and gets the W here. So again, best bet for me, taking the 2.5 points in what should be a fun shootout. There's one last undefeated team, UTSA. I see you, but you're playing after dark, so we will cover your game in that segment. But I do see they're still undefeated, still that 0 in that loss column, UTSA, which moves us to a couple of teams that have a 0 in the wrong column. Arizona, still no wins yet at home. They wasted a couple of golden opportunities. They had the Northern Arizona game, they had the Washington game, right, that they hung in there in that first half. Still winless on the season. They're home to California. California is an 11.5-point road favorite. Cousin Jerry, what do you got?
Yeah, remember when I said that you should never lay a touchdown with a Pac-12
Mhm,
team on the
mhm.
road? That doesn't
Yep.
apply against Arizona.
Arizona's not a team.
Yeah,
Well,
official
that's
play from
harsh.
official play from me here. I'm laying the 11.5 points with Cal. I feel like I'm going to regret this. I'm about to give y'all way more of a backstory with my relationship with Cal than y'all want. But a few years ago, they had Garbers, who's still the quarterback now, but it was like this. They were a covering machine when he was playing quarterback. The problem is when he got hurt, like they couldn't cover any spread. It got really bad. So that was kind of my basis for when I think we all took Cal the first week of the season against Nevada, and we all lost. I thought they were going to be able to cover no problem again because Garbage was back. Um, this season just hasn't played out at all like I expected. I think part of I mentioned last week it was like play them when they're a dog and fade them when they're a favorite, and then of
Mhm.
course they've started kind of flip that recently. This is
They
more of
started
a
to play
play.
really well.
Yeah, this is more. They should have beat Washington too. I won't cover all that, but they should have beat Washington earlier in the season as well. So I think this is more of a play with my heart. I thought I knew something about Cal. I kind of still want to be proven right, and also I just think Arizona is so bad. Cal's been playing better. Their record should be better than what it is. So I'm laying the 11.5 points. Again, y'all can make fun of me when I'm not here next week, but official play from me. Laying the 11.5 with Cal.
I don't think we can prospectively make fun of you for taking the favorite against a winless team.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, you could have 2 weeks ago when I did the same thing with Washington and looked real dumb. So
This is
don't give
true.
up hope. Don't give up hope.
This is true. Hey, again, just like we talked about earlier, I'm in the same boat. This is a best bet for me. Cal minus 11.5. The model thinks it should be 16. This line, even if it wasn't 16, I'm fine with that, but this line should be 14, maybe 14.5. There's zero reason that it's on the other side of 13 and 14. That's why this is a best bet for me, because it's crossing those two really key numbers, even though it's a road game. Look, Cal is playing very well. I've been against Cal a couple of weeks. Model sees how well they're playing and keeps bumping them up and is fairly aggressive because Cal's been playing very, very well of late. This is a complete mismatch with how bad Arizona is. And so the model's finally flipped on Cal and said, hey, we see you and what you're doing. I think they destroy Arizona and keep Arizona one less, so that we will still be talking about them in this segment in weeks to come. And our last winless team, UNLV at New Mexico. New Mexico is a 1-point home favorite. Cousin Jared.
Official play for me, I'm laying the 1 point with New Mexico. So I watched almost all of that UNLV Nevada game. Yeah, I took the 20.5 points with Nevada, or excuse me, UNLV. That wasn't enough to get me to the window. But some similar observations as to what I had with the Temple quarterback situation a couple of weeks ago. You could say the same thing about UNLV. I lost count how many times I saw the UNLV quarterback make a really bad throw or have turnover or something, walking back to the sideline with his head down. He seemed to have lost all of his confidence. So, New Mexico came off that win against Wyoming. I don't know what that means, except that they won. But at this point, I have a lot more faith in New Mexico than I do UNLV. And again, based on what I saw from the UNLV offense last week and the quarterback specifically, if it's a tight game, I don't trust him to make the big plays. So I'm going to lay the 1 point with New Mexico.
Official pick for me too. I am also laying the 1 point. I don't think it needs to be as complicated as that, Jared. You're basically asking a team to straight up win against a winless UNLV team at home. And the list of teams that you would not trust to get that job done is pretty small at this point. And I don't think UNM is on that list.
Yeah, but UNLV's been feisty this season, except last week against Nevada, and they had some spark because it was a rivalry game, but they were never in that game. So I don't know. I see what you're saying. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I backed UNLV last week. I don't want to be completely wrong, but yeah, we're on the same side, so I agree with you.
So I am also playing New Mexico. It's all three of us -1. Best bet for me. The model thinks it should be New Mexico -7. I don't understand this line at all. I think people are, especially early on in the week. This is, again, I'm going to break my rule again. I think this line becomes New Mexico favored by, I think it closes in the 3 to 4 range. I think early on, I think it's people saying UNLV has played relatively well. They had, for the most part, up until last week, people thinking about New Mexico being bad, but New Mexico's a better team than UNLV. They've been a better team all season, I think. They're at home. I just don't see why this line just doesn't make any sense to me. Also, thinking about UNLV and just because of what happened in the NFL with the Lions here reminds me that the Lions, if you follow the NFL, were a team that had looked good, hadn't won, but they were covering and people were liking them. And the Lions go and lose by 100 to the Eagles. So sometimes these teams that are like, hey, we're playing well, but we haven't won yet. Sometimes that keeps happening. And sometimes those teams completely fall apart. And they fell apart last week to Nevada. What's going to happen this week? But it just makes me think you can't just play the whole they've been playing well thing with UNLV. Thus, they're going to eventually get a win. I mean, they were playing well, but they're still not a good team.
Yeah.
And so I think New Mexico is the right side here. So
well, and
best bet New Mexico -1.
And I think you made a good point there too. Just like we talked about positive brand recognition with Boise State, I think you got a lot of negative brand recognition with New Mexico. So I think that plays into it as well.
Yep, absolutely. And that wraps up our Still Got Them Zeros segment. Moving on to one that we have enjoyed for several weeks now here. You don't have to watch them to make the monies. We got 5 games in this segment. We'll remind you that every winner pays the same, even if it's not a sexy matchup. And we have a couple of doozies in this one. We're going to start off with Navy at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 22-point favorite. Jack, I think you have a play on this one for us.
Yeah, so official play for me. I'm going to lay the points with Notre Dame. Now, the last time I faded Navy, I believe it did not go well for me.
I think I was on that too, Cincinnati, and that did not.
No, that did not go well for me at all. This is a prime example of me not learning from my errors. I think Notre Dame has just as much to play for as Cincinnati does, but they're not as maddeningly inconsistent early on as Cincinnati has been. So I think they're going to actually find themselves in the position where Navy has to play catch up. And by the nature of their scheme, they're just not going to be able to do so. So that's what I'm attempting this time.
It makes a lot of sense. That Cincinnati-Navy game, once Cincinnati took control at the end, the wheels came off fast for Navy. If that had happened in the second quarter, I think Cincinnati gets them an easy cover. The problem is it happened in the fourth quarter and the wheels came off, but the game was basically over by that point.
What's that Vince Lombardi quote? I didn't lose. I just ran out of time.
Exactly. I'm also laying the 22 with Notre Dame, and that one is at even money for the record. The model thinks it should be 27. This is, for me, less of a play against Navy, more of a play on Notre Dame. I've backed Notre Dame as a best bet the last 2 weeks, and both of those have won. I'm going back to the well. I had Notre Dame also as a best bet against Wisconsin earlier in the year. I've liked Notre Dame more than most people have, and it's paid off pretty well. So I don't see any reason to change that up. The model still likes them. So I'm going to roll with it again here. So official pick Notre Dame -22 at even money. Coastal Carolina is also a large favorite at Georgia Southern. They are a 19.5-point favorite. Cousin Jared.
Yeah, so official play for me here. I'm laying the 19.5 points, and this is kind of just another gut feel like it was with Troy going against Coastal last week. Coastal just hasn't had a big blowout win recently. It feels like they're due based on how they were just destroying everybody in the first half of the season. So I think this is maybe a get right game. Georgia Southern, they fired their coach, and obviously there must have been a reason they fired their coach, right? And then they turn around and just put up 59 points or something like that on Arkansas State, which one will do against Arkansas State. But then the wheels.
We haven't talked about that in a while. We hammered against Arkansas State giving up points for a while early on in this podcast, and then we haven't mentioned and then
they stopped playing people we care about.
Coming full circle, then they played Louisiana close, which I mentioned earlier. Louisiana just has all those close games, but anyway, so they looked good. They fired the coach. They looked good against Arkansas State. Now the wheels have kind of started coming off the way that you would expect when you fire your coach. So I just think Coastal's due for a big win here. So I'm laying the 19.5.
I also am laying the 19.5. It's a best bet for me, only at 19.5. Otherwise, it's just a regular play. The reason why, we've talked about this a lot. My model doesn't love to lay big numbers. So what it does, I like it. But also the model thinks it should be 21.5. By laying 19.5, I'm crossing two really key numbers in 20 and 21 that it could easily land at. So that's the only reason it's a best bet here, because There's 7-8% probability that we're getting a 20 or a 21 point win in this game. So that's why I like it right there as well. I hope you are correct, Cousin Jared, that they are eager for that big win, eager for those style points, because we're going to need them to run up the score here on this one. Sticking in that kind of region of the country, a team that has been fun to watch all year, Louisiana Monroe, is at Texas State. Cousin Jared, what is your pick on this one?
Official play from me here. I'm taking the 3.5 points with Louisiana Monroe. So, I don't want to say I keep up with Texas State closely, but, their head coach, Jake Spavital, used to be the offense coordinator at A&M. So I kind of keep tabs on what they're doing. Had high hopes for them the past couple of years, and they've just kind of been going downhill. Things haven't progressed the way that you would expect. Louisiana Monroe, the exact opposite, like no expectations of them at all under Terry Bowden, I believe, and Rich Rodriguez, the offense coordinator. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's like if Rich Rodriguez is an offensive coordinator at a G5 school, it's like he makes a difference. So, they
makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah. So they've been playing really well. So I feel good about getting the 3.5 points here. I can't, personally, when I have a key number like that, crossing 3, I'm going to take the 3.5 points. But looking at Louisiana Monroe's schedule, if you want to take the money line, I would probably endorse that. Their games, they either win or they do not come close to covering what I would assume any of these lines would have been. So if you wanted to take Louisiana Monroe on the money line, I would endorse that as well. But because it's crossed that key number for me, I'm going to take the 3.5, even though I would envision that it doesn't matter.
I'm also taking the 3.5. The model thinks this should be a pick 'em. It's crossing a key number, as you said. So there's a lot to like here about Louisiana Monroe. Louisiana Monroe almost got the backdoor cover last week. There's like 2 minutes to go. Poor guy's running into the end zone and he fumbles it. I know he feels horrible wanting to get that touchdown. I mean, and it's one of those things where the replays looking at it, there's not a good camera angle, and you're just sitting there going like, man, if it was just a yard closer, he had it. So that really hurt, not getting the back door there. And what was a frustrating game for Louisiana Monroe, but a much easier opponent this week here playing Texas State. Unlike you, I think they get the win outright. They've been playing really well lately, but crossing that key number, if this is a close game, you're going to love having that 3.5 in your pocket. So official pick for me, Louisiana Monroe plus 3.5. Kansas State at Kansas. Kansas State is a 23.5 point favorite. We somehow talk about Kansas every week on this podcast as well. I don't know why, but we do. Cousin Jared, what is your pick for this one?
Yeah, so don't underthink this, people. It's Kansas and Kansas State. Official play for me under 57. And a little bit of extra juice there. That's at minus 120 whenever that was pulled. So I mean, come on, guys. Kansas State went under last week against TCU. Kansas did not go under, but I think
Kansas went under some of the numbers depending on when you got that. The total was at 58.5 early on.
Yeah. So
Kansas did their part.
Kansas did their offensively. They didn't do their part defensively.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm worried that Kansas offense has just kind of the Oklahoma game, they fired every shot that they had, and I'm not sure that they have anything left. So again, official play for me under 57 at minus 120 there.
So fun question for the group. So Kansas gets Kansas State at Texas, at TCU, West Virginia. How many points do they score the rest of the year? Is it 35? Do they get 5 touchdowns in those 4 games?
No.
I don't think so either.
No, I think they get I don't think they get a touchdown this week. I'll talk about that in a minute. I think they get 1 touchdown against West Virginia. I think they get 2 against TCU. I think they get 9 against Texas. I think they get 3 touchdowns the rest of the year.
So conceivably, if you add up the total for the last 5 games of their season, that still might not be enough to beat Oklahoma in that one game they cared so much about.
Yeah, like I said, they used all the.
They used everything.
Yeah, I am laying the 23.5 with Kansas State official pick. This is the Big 12 insider speaking right here. If you follow this rivalry whatsoever, Kansas State loves to kill Kansas. This game is going to be 50-0. It's going to be a repeat of the Oklahoma State game. Yeah. They are not going to let off the pedal. They're going to keep their defensive starters in. Kansas will not score a touchdown. I don't think they'll score a field goal even. Kansas State just loves to kill Kansas. And so I think I think 49-0, 52-0. I think this is going to be a massacre. The model has it pegged pretty much spot on. This is simply I've seen this game play out. I know how the Kansas State players, coaches, everybody there feels about Kansas.
Yeah, this is like the machines destroying Zion and the Matrix levels of efficiency. They've done this so many times and they just know how to do it.
Yeah. So I'm laying the 23.5 there with Kansas State. Our last game in this segment, Liberty at Ole Miss. This is the whole Liberty's coach used to coach at Ole Miss thing, right? If I remember correctly.
Something along those lines.
That was something along those lines. Yeah. We won't dive into that backstory. Ole Miss is a 9-point home favorite. Cousin Jared.
Yeah, official play from me here. I am laying the 9 points with Ole Miss at home. So reviewing Liberty's schedule here, they have played one Power 5 team and they lost by 3 at Syracuse. And you're telling me I only have to lay 9 points with Ole Miss? Sign me up.
So Ole Miss is a lot better than Syracuse.
And Syracuse doesn't count.
Yes,
they're barely Power 5.
Yes, very, very low. Although Syracuse playing much better than I thought they would this year, but yes, very low in Power 5.
Maybe a lot of winners there.
Yeah, so I'm laying the 9 points. I'm shocked that this is 9.
I lean Ole Miss, so it's a play at smaller unit for me. The model thinks it should be 11. It's only a lean because there's not a ton of value crossing 10, but there is a 2-point difference, and so I think that Ole Miss is the right side. I agree with what you said there. I just can't. The math just isn't quite there for me to make it a full pick, but I do think Ole Miss is the right side, so I'm laying the 9 as a lean as well. I've got some quick hitter picks for you. I'm going to start with 3 more best bets and then move on to some regular plays. Tulane at Central Florida. Central Florida is a 12.5-point favorite. The model thinks 15, so we're crossing 2 very key numbers in 13 and 14. That makes it a best bet for me. I've backed Central Florida the last 2 weeks. They've covered both of them. I think that trend continues. They are starting to play a lot closer to what we hoped they would be, thought they would be at the start of the season. Indiana at Michigan. Michigan is a 20-point favorite. That is another best bet for me. The model thinks 23.5. Again, I've got the push protection at 20. 21 is a key number. Once you get up to that high of a probability, I've been fading Indiana. It was a push last week on that one. Up until last week, I've been backing Michigan. I don't see any reason to change that. Indiana is not very good. Michigan is. I think Michigan takes out their anger from last week and kicks the crap out of poor IU.
Yeah.
NC State is a 3-point road favorite at Florida State. That's a best bet for me at 3. The model thinks it should be 5. So again, we're crossing 3 and 4 there. Florida State, after last week, after some of their games, at some point, I'm just not sure how much they have left in the tank. NC State, I think, is out to prove something at this point. And I think they go into Tallahassee and get them an easy win. So I like that a lot, especially at 3. On to regular picks. Pittsburgh minus 20.5 at Duke. Duke last week just didn't even show up. I don't see why they'd show up this week. Pittsburgh is me pretty pissed off after last week. I think that offense gets rolling and Pittsburgh can just name their total at this point. Just like Wake Forest did last week. I don't see much of a difference in how that game's going to go. Penn State at Maryland. Maryland plus 11 is my pick. The model thinks it should only be 5.5. That's quite a difference. It's not a best bet simply because Maryland's run defense is so atrocious. They were supposed to get right last week against Indiana, and Indiana still put up tons of yards on them. So it's only not a best bet because I'm sitting there going, I don't think Maryland can stop anybody. And so I'm really worried about, Cousin Jerry, this is that type of play that you would have. You would have the under in this game, and I'd be really worried that Penn State is up, 6, up 8, just running the clock out, and then the guy breaks a 70-yard run. I mean, that's exactly what Maryland would do, and then it would push the total over. So it's not a best bet because I'm nervous about something like that happening. But the model thinks these teams are a lot closer than 11 points. You're crossing a lot of key numbers. So I like Maryland, but I cannot make it a best bet knowing how bad Maryland's defense is. Their Big Ten game, Illinois at Minnesota, official pick here for me, Minnesota minus 14.5. The model thinks it should be 18. I just think Minnesota is a much better team. That's about a 6% edge, which is a pretty solid edge for me here. Tennessee plus 3 at Kentucky. The model thinks they should be a short favorite, so I like getting 3. Otherwise, it's a lot harder to back if it drops below the 3, but getting the field goal, this could easily be a toss-up game. Another SEC game, Florida at South Carolina. I'm taking 19.5 with South Carolina. The model thinks this should only be 12. South Carolina isn't very good, but Florida's just been so up and down this year that the model can't give them credit for all of the good without considering the bad as well. We talked about this earlier as well. So it's one of those where on average, I'm okay getting the 19.5. Of course, the problem with Florida is this is either going to be a nail biter or they're going to win by 40. And so that's why it's not a best bet, even though my model has a difference of about 7.5 points. So my model's really far off from this one. So I like it, but knowing that if I get good Florida, this could be a runaway makes it not a best bet. And then my last one, SMU -6 at Memphis. The model thinks it should be 7.5. So push protection on the 6, and of course 7 being such a likely outcome here. I'm laying the points with SMU. Hopefully they can make up for last week's crazy ending, and hopefully they're not hung over from that, and then go out there and take care of business against the Memphis team. They're much better than Memphis. I know it's on the road, but they're a much better team than Memphis is.
Yeah, and loyal listeners, don't think that I have left you with the Memphis under as of yet. My total research takes more time, so be watching Twitter this week. I may jump back on the Memphis under bandwagon because this SMU game coming off, like you mentioned, that game against Houston last week, this seems ripe for a potential underplay. So stay tuned on Twitter, everybody.
And Jared's Memphis under addiction, Rouge. It's like ahead again.
Yes.
All right, and then Cousin Jared, you have one more pick on a game that has not been touched yet, so the floor is yours for that one.
Yeah, so again, just making a play here with the best information I have at the time. Charlotte had a quarterback injury a couple of weeks ago, and their offense has played really well since then. And then the backup came in, and the backup has not played nearly as well. Charlotte scored 13 points against Western Kentucky last week. Western Kentucky, basically every team has gone up and down the field with Western Kentucky. I mean, WKU, they're exciting to watch. I mean, they're 4-4. They win their games, but they also give up a lot of points. They did not give up very many points to Charlotte. They only scored 13, and the backup quarterback averaged 4.5 yards per attempt. 118 yards on 25.
That's tough to do
attempts.
In the college game to do that.
That is tough to do. So I'm going to make an official play for myself. Rice at Charlotte. I'm going to take the under 53. If we find out that the starter for Charlotte is back in, this is probably going to look like a dumb play. But again, just making a play with the best information I have right now, I'm going to take the under 53 in that game.
Why don't you just watch soccer, Jared?
Oh,
you won't see enough points.
Because soccer can't give me the heartbreak that a 9 lateral touchdown with 0 time on the clock can give me. You got to live a little.
This is true. Like the soccer has some exciting plays, but there's nothing in soccer that compares to that. I mean, the craziest ending. A couple comments there. I do like that pick as well, especially like you said, if the backups. And Rice last week, I watched some of that UNT game, and they struggled offensively. That game got you to the window with an under.
Yep.
And so that was even going to overtime, got you to the window with an under. So that was good. Yeah. I backed Charlotte last week against Western Kentucky, thinking, as you talked about, everybody scores on Western Kentucky. I was getting tons of points, and they just looked miserable offensively. So I think you're spot on with that one. Again, everyone listening to this, keep an eye on the news for their quarterback situation there. And we're going to wrap up this episode with our old standby After Dark. If you're a night owl who loves college football, this is the segment for you. USC at Arizona State. Arizona State is an 8-point favorite. Cousin Jared, what is your take on this game?
So copy paste everything I said from West Virginia last week, where I said I'm not going to touch them anymore. Yeah, for sure. Arizona State, after what I thought was the spot of all spots to just demolish Washington State. And that game was never even close. Like they didn't even come close to winning that game, much less covering whatever the line ended up at 16 or 17 points. Yeah. I was just completely wrong. Thankfully, didn't make that bet last week. USC, man, again, if somebody knows anything about USC, usually I would say I'm all ears. I don't want to hear it at this point. Like, I don't want to be convinced to back USC again. So I'm just done with both of these teams for the rest of the season.
I hear they have spots on their rowing team.
I like that. For the people, like the 5 people who watch this who get that joke, that will be
that's a very nice joke right there.
Thank you. I'm proud of that one.
So here's the best part. What are you started talking about that when you compared to West Virginia? I'm sitting here going, is he going to say the same about USC or Arizona State? Because you can honestly convince
Yeah.
me
Mhm.
of just stay away from USC or just stay away from Arizona State.
Yep.
Look, I'm gonna lean Arizona State here. Simply, the model has this pegged right on. This is about the right number. I'm gonna lean Arizona State -8, so a small play. And here's why. It simply has to do with the fact that when you have these -7.5, -8 type situations, it's one of those things where I think the books are begging you to take the hook. So I think it's probably the smarter side to not overthink it and just lay that number. But who knows what you're getting from either team. What I will say, Arizona State has the higher ceiling,
Yes.
which means they could easily win this game by 14, 20, something like that. I have no idea which team has the lower floor. They have both had some
Yeah.
miserable games. And the best part, you could use the transitive property with a couple of different teams in this one and convince yourself that USC is going to win by 50 and lose by 50.
Yep.
If you use Washington State, they're going to win by 50. I'm sure there's one that goes the other way around. These two teams are bonkers, so I cannot recommend putting a ton of your hard-earned money on this game. But if you want a little bit of action on the late night games, I think Arizona State's probably the smarter side. Whether it gets to the window or not, who the heck knows with these two teams?
This game's going to headline next week's segment. Picks the professor regrets taking.
Very possibly. Hey, but at least it's a lean, so it's only a much smaller investment. Next game, San Jose State at Nevada. Nevada is a 10-point home favorite. Cousin Jared, what is your take on this one?
So like I said, watched a lot of that UNLV Nevada game last week, and I was pretty impressed with Nevada. And when I first saw this, my thought was, man, I'll only have to lay 10 points for Nevada at home. That looks good. But after I started looking at the schedule, I just couldn't quite get there. Nevada has given up some backdoor covers this year, and they've played games close that, I mean, like, they controlled some of the games, but like the final score didn't really illustrate the level to which they controlled the game. So I just can't bring myself to lay double digits with Nevada here.
It's a best bet for me, Nevada -10. And here's the reason why. My model thinks it should be Nevada -12.5. I mentioned this last week. My model has had an anti-Nevada bias all season. I don't really know why. This is the first week all season that the model has wholeheartedly endorsed Nevada. Last week, it didn't not endorse them, which is why I made them an official pick, and it won. And so last week I said, hey, my model hates Nevada. It doesn't hate them this week. That means they're the side to be on. I think the same thing holds true this week, except the model actually likes them, which says something to me. I think Nevada is a much better team than San Jose State. I am a little bit worried, as you said, on the back door. They kind of tried a little bit of that last week, but got a key interception late to really seal the deal there. But I just think that San Jose State isn't that good. I think Nevada is a pretty good team. Their quarterback obviously has hopes of being a first-round draft pick. So I'm hoping for a nice, easy 17-point win. That way, at least if the backdoor happens, maybe it's a push, not a backdoor loss for me. San Diego State is a 7.5-point road favorite going out to the island of Hawaii.
Yeah, the island special here.
That says it all right there. Just a heavy sigh.
I wish we were going.
Hey, it'd be a fun game to watch. Absolutely. And of course, do other things out there.
So San Diego State seems like the right side here. But they just seem like the team who Fresno State just kind of potentially showed how you can beat them. And they're a team that I would have question marks about going forward because the offensive has never been that good. It's always been on the kind of the shoulders of their defense. And so if Fresno State somehow demonstrated a kind of a glitch in the armor there, I think San Diego State's going to have a tough back half of the season. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. I'm just saying that it's given me enough pause where this line's only 7.5. That seems like San Diego State should be able to cover that. But we've seen some weird stuff on the island, and I'm talking specifically about Fresno State losing out there earlier in the season. So this is a stay away from me.
It's an official pick for me, San Diego State -7.5. If it's at 7, it's a best bet. I understand everything that you said. Here's the thing. Hawaii is not good. I backed them last week against Utah State, getting a lot of points, and they were never in that game. They cannot stop anybody whatsoever.
Hawaii is not good on the mainland.
They also struggled.
I mean, they're not good at home either, but they're especially bad on the mainland.
Yeah. Yeah. They were awful out there. I think this is a good spot for San Diego State too. I totally get what you said there, Cousin Jed. I watched the game. I was not impressed with San Diego State, but this is the spot here to get things right. Have your team focused going out to Hawaii and say, look, guys, if you don't take care of business, you're going to end up with another loss, and that's going to derail the season completely. So I think they show up focused. The model thinks this should be 10.5. Again, it's a best bet at 7, just because of the fact that they could easily win this game by 7. They could easily be up 14. Hawaii has the ball late, and you're cringing, just hoping that,
right,
hoping that if Hawaii scores a touchdown, they miss the extra point or something, right? So that's the only reason it's not a best bet, because of that hook there. But otherwise, I think San Diego State's the right side. Again, my model thinks there's a 3-point discrepancy there, so it's a pretty solid edge for me. And the last game, the game that we passed up on earlier, UTSA. Hey, we see you there. We know I know you still got that 0 in that loss column. They are a 12.5-point road favorite at UTEP. Because Jared, I know you have a beef with game day on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Look, people, this should be where College game day is at this week. You're not gonna get a better scene the first weekend in November than going out to El Paso and getting to take in a game at the Sun Bowl. The game's on ESPN too. You get the network plug there. This was the perfect opportunity, and we passed it up. I wanted to. I was on the UTSA bandwagon early. I said very early on, I think they were going to have a really good season. But man, UTEP has been good to us the past few weeks. And so this is a stay away from me. My heart wants to say take UTSA to prove that you were right. My brain says UTEP has been in some close games. They like to keep it close. I mentioned earlier those 2 touchdowns in the last 2.5 minutes against FAU this past week. It seems that UTEP's the type of team who's never going to quit, no matter how far they're down. So a no play here. I think this is going to be a good game. I'm going to be tuned in watching this one. And again, I think we made fun of them earlier in the season, watching the sunset at the UTEP game, exactly, at the sunset time there when the game was kicking off. But I think it's going to be a really good scene out there this weekend. And I'm going to be tuned in to ESPN2 when this game kicks off.
This game should not be after dark. This game should be just before dark.
It should be at sunset. Yes, it should be at sunset.
Because it kicks off UTEP. That's
9:50.
It's Mountain time.
Yeah, Mountain time. So 8:15 local.
Yeah.
They should be kicking this game off earlier than that.
Yeah. Get the beautiful sunset. It's I've not been out there, but it just from the video I've seen, it's a beautiful stadium with a beautiful backdrop. I'm with you. You could have had a really fun time out there. Talked about UTSA being undefeated. Talk about the renaissance there at UTEP. UTEP has been a team that at the start of the season I thought would have been.
I can write the script for you. Dana Dimmel was an assistant under Snyder there at Kansas State for a long time, and he's taken the same formula that Kansas State had, and he's taken it to UTEP. I could write it for you game day. Like, you just go. Yeah.
And of course, neither one of these teams extremely high in my power ratings because the teams that they're playing aren't that good, but they're getting it done on the field, and that's what matters. They're both having a lot of success this season. They've both done very well if you've been betting on them. My model makes this a 12-point game, so it's a pass for me, which I hate for right now. Obviously, keep an eye on BetStamp and Twitter. Depending on how this line moves, if this line moves one way or the other, I might get a little bit of action in on it and tell you which way to go. But for right now, it's hard to really recommend one side or the other. I'm like you, Cousin Jared. I think this is, I know. I play almost every game. It seems like this one's a tough one.
That teasing.
I know.
No plays.
Yeah, no plays. I thought the same thing, but I can't really force it here. But yeah, keep tuned to some of those outlets because one of us might end up with a play. If nothing else, this is going to be a fantastic game. So it should be a lot of fun. 2 teams that, if you did look at this game at the start of the season, you'd have said no one's going to care at all about this, but one that I think has a lot of intrigue. One of our 4 After Dark games for the week, which that does wrap us up for another episode of Picks with a Professor. I am Professor Sides. For Jack and Cousin Jared, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe or follow if you aren't already. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.